Have you ever wondered why cruises leaving from the U.S. have to go to a foreign port? Ahoy travelers, it's Amy with Cruising from the Ozarks here to help you make your travel experience a success. The Passenger Vessel Services Act, or PVSA, is a piece of U.S. legislation designed to protect American maritime interests. Make sure that we're making our money, right? Most countries have something similar. However, the U.S. probably has the strictest version. Basically, the PVSA says that if a vessel wants to transport passengers between two U.S. ports, it must be flagged or registered in the U.S. To do this, the ship must be built in a U.S. shipyard with U.S. steel, owned by a U.S. citizen, and crewed by 90% or more American citizens. And that does not include very many cruise ships. There's only one major cruise ship that meets the requirement, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Due to costs, U.S. cruise lines like Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and others, they register their ships under the flag of a foreign country. These are often South American countries. This allows the lines to adhere to the Passenger Vessel Services Act and circumvent U.S. employment laws and other similar laws that would cost the cruise line a lot of money. Without it, cruising would be much more expensive than it is today. The rule of thumb that cruise lines use when planning itineraries to ensure compliance is when leaving from and returning to the same U.S. port, so a closed loop, they need to make a call in a nearby foreign port. This is why even short cruises make at least one stop in a foreign port. Things get trickier when you're going from one U.S. port to a different U.S. port. Itineraries that do this are going to need to visit a distant foreign port, not just a nearby one. And a distant foreign port must include somewhere in South America or the Caribbean. This has a massive effect on Alaskan cruises. It's popular for Alaskan itineraries to be one-way cruises, and this means that their port of embarkation and departure are going to be different. However, these one-way cruises will all have at least one of those ports be a Canadian port in order to satisfy the requirements of the Passenger Vessel Services Act. You won't see an Alaskan cruise begin in Seattle and end in Juneau because none of the ships currently sailing Alaska are flagged in the U.S., and you're unlikely to see any anytime soon. U.S. Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska introduced the Cruising for Alaska's Workforce Act in 2021. And this was an attempt to get an exemption from the PVSA for Alaska cruises, but it died on the floor of Congress and was never voted on.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill.
Had it been signed into law, it would have allowed foreign flagged passenger vessels with more than 1,000 passengers to sail from U.S. port to U.S. port on Alaskan cruises, just Alaskan cruises, without the requirement of visiting a distant foreign port. This exemption would have automatically become null and void if a U.S. flagged ship carrying more than 1,000 passengers began sailing in Alaska. Again, highly unlikely. Hers is not the only bill submitted to Congress in an attempt to make cruising through Alaska easier for cruise lines, which would benefit Alaskan ports and allow them to make more money from the cruise industry. None of these have passed. None have made it through Congress. Senator Murkowski previously introduced the Alaska Tourism Restoration Act, which was signed into law in May of 21. And this provided a temporary exemption from the PVSA for cruises traveling between the state of Washington and Alaska. And it was in order to get around Canada's restrictions preventing U.S. cruises from docking at their ports during COVID-era restrictions. This, of course, has since been rescinded. Canada allows these ships to now port again. Another way the Passenger Vessel Services Act impacts itineraries are on sailings from the West Coast to Hawaii. There are two options. Either a one-way tour from Vancouver to Honolulu, with the second option being a round trip, so a closed loop, out of a U.S. West Coast port with a stop in Ensenada, Mexico. This is to meet that nearby foreign port requirement, either Canada or Mexico. There is one ship that can sail without these restrictions, but before we get to that and more, If you enjoy this video and maybe even learn something, consider subscribing with the notification bell on. And that way you won't miss any future posts. Be sure to hit that like button as well. It only takes a second, and doing so helps cruisers like you find us. Norwegian's Pride of America is the one cruise ship that can sail around the Hawaiian Islands without the need to visit a foreign port because it is flagged as a U.S. vessel. The majority of the crew are U.S. citizens that are hired and paid based on U.S. employment laws. All this means that a cruise on the Pride of America will likely cost cruisers a pretty penny. For example, a quick search shows a 7-day cruise around Hawaii on the Pride of America has a base price of $1,300. But a 9-day cruise on Royal Caribbean's Ovation of the Seas, leaving out of Vancouver, Canada, and going to Hawaii, has a base price of just over $700. Now that's a significant difference. It's almost double. And that doesn't take into account the difference that you're likely going to incur in the cost of flights and hotels.
I only have like $3.50, so it's hard, super hard.
You may be wondering what happens if a cruise ship ignores the PBSA. Well, that would be a costly mistake. The cruise line would be fined over $700 for every soul on board if they do not make a stop in a foreign port. In fact, if someone were to be put off the ship for some reason before the line makes this all-important stop at a foreign port, no matter the reason, even a medical emergency, the ship is fined for that and could potentially pass that cost along to the passenger. If a ship were to encounter a storm that prevents them from making landfall in a foreign port, which could very well happen on a short 3-day cruise that only has one stop, that could be a monetary disaster for the line. Do you think the Passenger Vessel Services Act is outdated? Do you think something like the Cruising for Alaska's Workforce Act is a good solution? Or do you not think it goes far enough? Comment below. I'd also like to know if you find content like this interesting and educational. I do love researching everything to do with cruising. Why not stick around and check out this video and then come back for more information designed to help you have an amazing cruise. Have a blessed week, everyone.